definitely. What you got there?
I got some pure alcohol.
I have, I'll get to it in a minute, but I also have a form of alcohol.
Ooh.
But here we are again, and today's podcast is going to be brought to you by my big dead ass and the very image of God.
This week's podcast is also brought to you by the hashtag shampoo challenge and wet throats.
I am your host, Madison.
I'm your other host, Jesse James. Madison, I like your garbage bag.
Thank you. I am currently in my childhood home, which had a tree fall on it a month ago, something like that. And that bag is containing the debris / air coming from outside.
Would you mind adjusting the camera for a moment so we can get a good shot of that mummy cat and the bag? That might get cut off in our final version.
Right. Here you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Front and center.
It's just such a good look.
It's very calming. It's very zen in here.
It's got a nice like airflow, and then the very old cat. You said that cat's 22?
Yep.
It's an old cat.
He's real old. Little bag of bones. But he's having a good time just sleeping next to this big old garbage bag, I guess.
I do like your wall design at your childhood home. It looks like the early painting assignments where we would just put down some tape and put different values of color next to each other.
Yeah, I think I recruited, I think it was my 16th birthday that I recruited all of my 2 friends to help me paint this. And yes, I was inspired by the different value gradation paint chips you get at like grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely inspires that. But at least you have another gradation pillow, it looks like, to bring it all together.
Really finalize things. Yeah. It's very it was supposed to be mint, actually, because I believe that year mint was like the color, at least according to Madison, but it's very turquoise now.
Mint I feel like was a big color in like, I don't know, like the 2002 2003 range. Is that close to when that was happening?
No, that would have been maybe 2013 or 2014 that I did this to my house.
Okay. Yeah, so that must have been a resurgence of mint.
It was.
I think I was deep into a chartreuse phase at that point.
Ooh, yeah. That's good too. Yeah. I was deep into the mint.
That's a good color. It offsets a lot of browns and reds, so
there are a lot of very red-brown furniture items in here, including my haunted desk. So,
ooh, it's even more haunted that we can't see it. Can you give us a an audio description of this haunted desk?
It's actually, I actually quite like it. I don't know. I would say the style is maybe, I feel like everyone calls everything mid-century modern, and I don't really know what it looks like. But that's what I would say. It's very like not geometric. There's some like wood carving sort of designs in it that are kind of like, there's a wavy line, like dots, and then in the center of it, it's got kind of a compass rose sort of thing on the front.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really nice piece of furniture, but I've heard that my great grandfather may or may not have been involved in the occult, so I don't know what that means.
Maybe he had it on a haunted boat at one point.
Hopefully. One can only hope.
Also, mid-century modern just sounds like a nice way of saying something is 50 to 80 years old. So
Yeah, that's the age range that I would guess. It's very like smooth, like round edges. I don't know. I don't know. It's brown.
uh, I got an update on the back. Back is fairly decent on pain. The rest of my body sucks because it has spent the last week trying to maintain everything else. So I can sit and I can swivel. That's cool. Like I can reach over here and bring into camera this pile of coffee grounds that I've been saving for planting, and that's no
Very
problem.
nice.
So mobility's back, baby. I'll
It's
be
just
in
kind of painful mobility.
sometimes I'll be in an empty warehouse really testing out this mobility soon. Soon being tomorrow. You have red vines over there? What the hell?
I do.
You're not using them as a straw to drink booze?
Well, considering the booze that I have, you tell me if that's a good decision.
It's better than some, only because it's light, but it's probably gonna make a weird, bitter thing out of it.
Yeah. Man, it's been a really long time since I've had a Blue Moon. I don't actually know why it's even here because my parents don't really drink. My brother just turned 21, so that's probably why.
Oh, okay. Did you find it in the desk?
No. No. I found it in the very, very back of the refrigerator. So
Nice.
yeah.
I like Blue Moon okay, but I do think it benefits from like and oftentimes I'll like squeeze some of the lemon juice from like a lemon juice container in it or something.
Yeah.
But I think that was also from a time period where I was discovering that sour beer is actually what I want and not just beer. Despite the fact
Beer
that
that tastes like bread.
I do have this beer here right now.
Yeah. I do like that one. I've had that one. I think Blue Moon's okay. I have sort of a nostalgia for Blue Moon because I think it's the first beer I was ever offered or
Yeah.
drank. So
Man, I'm trying to think
it's
of the
fine.
first beer I ever had. I don't like Heineken, I know that. Weirdly enough, I think Corona might have been the first beer I had because
That's a good one.
yeah, my stepdad would have Corona available pretty much all the time for like after work beers if he was going to drink anything.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever been very into drinking, but oftentimes people who are like not that into drinking have the best drinking habits because they care about the taste.
Yeah.
And
That makes sense.
so a Corona with like a wedge of something in it is definitely something that's kind of nostalgic for me. It might have been the first, but I
Yeah.
think the first thing I ever had was whiskey. So, you know,
I think the first, yeah, Blue Moon probably was the first beer.
mhm.
Other than Mike's, like my mom would usually let me have like a couple sips of her Mike's whenever she got them, which was really not often. My mom doesn't drink that ever. But
Do you have any other snacks available? I feel like this is a early show thing we need to get out of the way in case.
The snack corner. No, my snack corner right now is limited to Red Vines and Blue Moon. That's it for me today.
I've got the snack of somebody who actually ate breakfast today, so I have a pile of baby kale and some tiny tomatoes, which always sounds good to me. That might just be like a vitamin deficiency, though. Hard to say. Let me check and see if we have any questions today. Or questions. I don't know if we'll be able to answer them because oftentimes our questions are pretty dumb. All right. Yeah, this will be quick. I put this up late last night. We've got a regular question asker who seems to legitimately just like art and podcasts. But today they did big smiling face, teeth closed, smiling face back and forth. So I think what they said in this question was, I don't know how to answer
really good
that.
Audio. I like that.
I don't know how to answer that. Hold on. But I think it's probably yes. And
agreed.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And thank you for that soundbite. If we ever do have like Patreon subscribers to to credit, that will be the
I've got an advertisement for advertisements, so that's a new one.
Wow.
They have the number 365 in their name, so you know they mean business.
Oh shit.
And then I have another Russian question, but I'm just gonna assume that this is an ad. Let me take a closer look at this. What does that mean? I thought I had this figured out because it's a Russian place, and then it had what looked like park time underneath it. So I thought, oh, that's a car thing. But I got closer, and it says pike time. So I have no idea.
Time.
It's literally impossible to say.
Have we ever received any responses from an account called Nasty Cat?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Of the various other Instagrams that I have run, every time I put up a question bubble thing, I get a response from an account called Nasty Cat, and it's just I'll read you one of the last responses. I think it's just like a spam bot.
Yeah,
thing.
Probably.
Oh shit, it's gone. Damn.
Oh no.
Anyway, they basically just type out the word purr.
Oh, okay.
In like all caps. Oh, here we go. Oh no, I can't. I don't have the message. But yeah, they type out purr with like a bunch of asterisks and like whimsical punctuation marks and things. I was just curious if we had been visited by the Nasty Cat account.
Not yet. One of my favorite like spam bot style actual accounts, like the people who just have like it looks like a filter and go through and respond to things, whether that's digital or not. I've gotten a bunch of different responses from them, but I really like Tengu masks as like a visual. So I put those in as hashtags when I make something that is like just sort of a I don't know. I draw a lot of faces for like art stuff, and a lot of times my sketches will have something that I will tag with that. And there is a person who their image on Instagram is just a Tengu mask, like a person wearing one, and then like a business suit on. And whenever anybody puts a hashtag Tengu mask as one of their tags, they will ask them if they needed something. And I will often respond to them and get human-ish answers. So I think they're just out there like doing that for fun, which I appreciate.
They just own that hashtag. That's their little corner of
basically
Instagram. I like it.
And I will always, if I can see somebody doing that as like a person, I'll always like play along with that stuff because like why not?
Yeah.
And I've gotten some okay responses off of that stuff. But give it a shot. It's worth seeing.
Yeah.
So just to get it out of the way, one of my sponsors this week was Wet Throats. That's really just a reference to a ad for my art that went up because I wasn't paying attention to the fact that if they were asking me a question on a artist statement style thing, that they were going to put that on the internet.
Nice.
So they put up a thing about hot mimosas and directly quoted me with keeping your throat wet for doing for doing video chats and stuff. So, that's attached to my name on the internet now.
That's really good.
Sour Buddy suggests keeping your throat wet with hot orange juice. I stand by it. So
it's not wrong. I think it's a good tip, actually. I 100,000% thought that wet throats was a reference to the final scene of The Matrix with all the fucking rain and shit, which we can talk about later. But that's what I was anticipating.
Yeah, so on that note, well, I guess, so I have two completely divorced from anything important sponsor topics.
Okay.
Have you stumbled into the fucking shampoo challenge bullshit yet?
I have not heard of it at all.
You want to type that hashtag into Twitter real quick? I would like a real-time response. It's as stupid as you expect.
Shampoo challenge?
Yep.
All right.
I'll stand by.
Wait. I think I know what this is about, and I kind of don't want to. Wait.
No, just type it into Twitter.
No! It is what I thought it was. That's me right now. This is very stupid.
Yep.
Wait, this person didn't even do it right.
Oh, a lot of people didn't do it right.
Oh, this person has 2 shampoo bottles.
Yeah, I saw a couple people trying to show off their multiple shampoo bottles. If I were going to do it, I would probably just line up a bunch of the hotel shampoos. I think I have those from like Hawaii or something.
More than anything, I'm really just judging these people based on their shampoo choices.
Yeah, no,
really
for real, people have terrible taste in what they are putting in their hair. And I guess that's not surprising. If you're going to use your dick print to hold something up, you're probably not making great choices. But yeah, it's...
I kind of want to... Okay. Let's go through these and let's go through like 3 of them and just explore the brands. I don't like these photos.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
We have... Oh, this person kind of like concealed the label, but you can tell that it's familiar. What is that?
That's that looks like
like Head and Shoulders.
Yeah, like that looks like dandruff shampoo that they didn't want to put dandruff shampoo on their dick for.
Okay, this one is definitely Dove for men. Because he's a man.
A very classy, very, very abrasive, full body and hair soap.
Yes. Oh, yeah, we were right. That definitely is Head and Shoulders because someone else has the same one. Oh, actually, I respect. That's an okay brand. I don't even know how to say it, but I recognize it, and it seems good.
Some kind of fructis.
It's like Ahava or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
All right. This person... I can't even read this. A lot of these people are turning the label in because they're ashamed. Which, yeah. Anyway, yeah, thanks for exposing me to that. I remember I think I saw the tweet that kicked this off like 4 days ago or something like that, and didn't pay attention to the rest of it.
Oh yeah, I looked at it once and was like, that's great.
What a fun way to out yourself as a complete douchebag in the middle of a pandemic, being like, how can I really drive this home?
I want to see if I can start some sort of hashtag of drawing a sad face on your own stomach. That's gonna be
That's a
that's
good
gonna be
one.
my hashtag.
At least I wouldn't feel like I needed to like take a shower after that one. These ones
Yeah.
are like there's just a lack of artistry to some of these.
Yeah. Yeah, you rarely see somebody doing something artful with a boner. That's what I've found.
But it can be done, just not in I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, the Venn diagram doesn't intersect very much with uh, Twitter regular and artful boner.
And as a disclaimer, I'm pretty sure, despite the fact that in our last pod, I think I asked for nudes in our email. You don't have to try and prove me wrong about this. Please, nobody try
No,
and prove me wrong about this.
send us your artful boners. What's that address again?
It's this week's podcast at gmail.com. Send all your artful boners there.
Yeah, we take artful boners. That can be our second shirt.
That one, no, I don't think I'd buy that shirt.
Yeah, that'd be a tough shirt to wear around.
I don't think I could.
Just for the I don't know. Well, you've got religious parents, so that makes it a little rough on images of you. Period.
Yeah.
But did you have any explanations needed for your intro?
I have to look at it again to make sure. So my first item, my big dead ass.
Yeah.
That is a Matrix related.
Yep. That one we'll explain here in a minute.
Yeah. I think I could knock out the other one real quick because it's very stupid. Semi-quick. The very image of God. Do you know where I'm going with that one? I mean, there's so many places I could.
Honestly, like that could be the Matrix, or that could be a lot of other things. But I'm curious what you're.
No, that one's just a complain corner. About an Ohio. What is he? A senator, representative? I can't remember. He's a politician.
Oh.
His name is Nino Vitale, and he has he's a Republican, so I mean, he's got some other questionable things going on, but he's come out and been in the news a lot in the last few days because he has made the statement that I will read verbatim because it's so interesting. People want to wear if people want to wear masks, they can, but mandating it, that's a whole different story for me. No one is stopping anybody from wearing a mask, but quite frankly, everyone else's freedom ends at the tip of my nose. Interesting quote from a guy who probably does not support abortion. You're not going to tell me what to do, and there's a lot of people that feel that way. So where the image of God comes into play is he went on TV and was like, our faces are the very image of God, and that would be disrespectful for us to cover our faces. So for that reason, I can't wear a mask because God will be mad.
Uh-huh. So my body, my choice.
Yeah. Very interesting how often that little talking point is coming up. Seems relevant now, won't be later when we're discussing some other topics, but yeah, I don't know. It's not really worth saying much. I'm not going to do the mental gymnastics to try and figure out how we got from point A to point B. It's just dumb. It's just stupid. I'm pretty sure God wants you to live. If you believe in God, I'm pretty sure he's all for washing your hands and safety measures, but
yeah,
I guess not. He's more focused on you like showing everyone your glorious stupid face.
Yeah, it's funny how the arguments of like God put science and soap here for a reason never come up when it has something to do with the economy. Because
Yeah.
God seems to fucking love money. That seems like God's
So
number one.
weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
And God usually talks through people who have a lot of money, so it has to be true. Ha.
Yeah. I
Ow.
yeah. I don't understand it. I had a conversation this week with someone who is religious and older, and they were
So it was a
talking
fun
about how
conversation.
it was great. But they went on for a really long time about how money is the root of all evil and money
Okay.
corrupts and all the shit. And I'm like, yes,
Sounds
yes,
sounds downright
100
communist.
100% on board. And then they started talking about how they lived through the age of communism and they saw firsthand like how bad it was. And then all like it devolved into basically the Chinese did the
Hmm.
pandemic is where that conversation ended. But I don't understand how you go from money is the root of all evil. I believe that, but like here, but these people are the exception. And
Yeah.
also, God gave us science, but like we shouldn't use it.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't know.
Especially like the uh I'm gonna say, even though I don't think publicizing deaths is beneficial in a lot of ways, I would say the lack of publicizing things like the preacher that died after essentially saying, fuck you, this is how it's supposed to be. We're not going to kowtow to having our rights to assemble taken away, even though let's ignore the fact that that takes away the rights of safety of everybody in that room. Uh, I'm gonna say we just do it anyway, and then he does get sick and dies of coronavirus, and nobody gives a shit about it. Like, no, that's fine. It seems like it was probably still the right thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and after he died, they switched to doing video conference church.
Yeah.
Just like everybody was saying, hey, why don't we do video conference church? We can all still get together and we can try to get people on like phone lines and stuff like that if we have people who don't have the ability to. And everybody's like, no, this is about rights. And then as soon as somebody
Yeah.
notable dies, it's like, okay, well, our rights don't matter. Let's just do it how
Well,
it's
just
smart.
yeah. But it
Yeah.
doesn't make any any kind of sense. If you're a church and your whole thing is evangelism and reaching people, literally right now is such a great time for you because people are stuck in their houses. If you're televising or like streaming or whatever, you're probably more likely to reach people right now than you are ever.
Yeah.
So, like, why fight it? I don't understand that. You're like, if your church has been resisting the push to more like technology and streaming, whatever that looks like, now's the time to like make that step and like not to give churches like free advice on how to expand their congregation, but like this would be the time.
Yeah.
And instead, a lot of people are just fighting it and being dumb.
Well, it's
And
like even in like the friend group that I'm interacting with directly the most, directly through the internet, I've basically heard everybody in that group say they are now working until like 7 or 8.
yeah,
Like everybody is putting in more work hours in less comfortable settings than they
mm-hmm.
were before and getting paid less. And like if people were embracing like this style of everything a little more as like corporations instead of being worried that it's going to be harder to control people when they're like off site, you you would think that they would just take that into account, but they don't
Yeah.
care about that part of it. They clearly, I don't know. Again, I don't want to give anybody advice when it comes to fucking screwing over their own employees, but like right now, I am, even as somebody who has very little work and extremely low money coming in, like I'm basically on call 24/7 all week. If somebody says I need work from you, I can't go in at normal hours of the day because my boss works normal hours of the day and we can't have other people in the building. So now if I need to work, it's weekends or nights. And like there's no real consideration for like, is that feasible? Like, is that actually something that we should be doing? And I've even gotten the response from friends who are doing like regular-ish hours on their like jobs that they can do from a desk, and they don't see a problem with that either. So like, it's very clear that public opinion could very easily be swayed towards like, oh yeah, we could just move towards a system where people work whenever you want and we don't have to adjust the way they're paid, the way that their benefits line up with it, any of that stuff. We could just make them do it. And that's kind of scary, and I'm glad people aren't like grabbing onto it, but also like if you know people on unemployment who are still doing some work, if they're not like me and unemployment just stops talking to them, uh, I was telling other people about this. I don't think I was telling you about it. I got a week of unemployment, and then I got some hours back because it was required for our like loan to hold our business up. So I technically have like very like limited hours that I am technically working, and my unemployment is all being like logged as though it is being accepted, and like my claims are all going into my like claim listings. Like I can re-access all of it. It's all been submitted properly. And the first week of 4, I got paid. Also, I didn't get any back pay. So like the chunk of time that they asked us to wait and they would offer back pay for, I just didn't have the option to get that. But once I did get that first week and I got some hours back afterwards, not only do they not answer emails even weeks later, they aren't paying me and they aren't responding to anything, and they aren't telling me it's declined. It's just going into a list and nothing's happening. So like anything like this, you have to assume that there is a decent chunk of people out there that also have this happening. And the only reason, again, that I'm able to subsist off of this is because I have a roommate who is extremely generous and is just taking base rent and not like, usually I pay through them to get like utilities paid, and I'm just not paying utilities, and that's basically turned into my food money. And then like I have parents who care about me, and I'm getting like care packages and stuff on occasion. So like this is not a sustainable way to live, but like there have to be a lot of other people out there who are going through the same thing if it's happening to one person. And that fucking sucks. And I don't have any like I've gone through unemployment like years and years ago. Well, not that long ago, but like long enough ago to where it ran out most of my ability to have it while I was looking for jobs, and then that was long enough ago to where I have it again, like fairly like easily at this point. But like that money should be there. Like even without this current crisis, like I'm working like half the hours that I would be getting at a 20% reduction of my initial hours. So I'm getting like garbage, and there's just no added anything, especially when we're in a situation where there's supposed to be added money for people who are in this position. Exactly. Not talking to me and not paying me is pretty shitty. Anyway.
Most people that I know haven't gotten their free money, whatever, stimulus. I haven't
they're
gotten mine. I don't know.
as signed by the president stimulus.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
and again, I don't give a shit that it was signed, but it does bother me a little that held it up for like an extra week, because that's pretty stupid. And also, maybe so I got mine, and that's been helpful because I am a poor person, and getting what is essentially a poor person's rent and a little extra is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But um, like a week after that, both my roommate and I got letters with the signature on it. So like you're also sent mail that is just a thing saying, congratulations, you've received this from me. And that seems like an incredible waste of paper. Like, why send everybody in the fucking country a letter that says, I did this, here's my signature? Like,
Seems almost like a conflict of interest. Seems almost like a campaign move, like you're trying to get reelected. Seems like something that wouldn't be allowed
maybe.
if you weren't the president of the United States.
It also seems like a conflict of interest when you're trying to shut down the post office and you rely on the post office to send every fucking person in the country a piece of mail.
You're basically a free advertisement for your reelection campaign. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's been a mixed bag, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, that got away from me, but but basically, Nino Vitale, some politician in Ohio, you're a fucking idiot, and fuck you for pulling this type of shit. Because more than likely, you may get it, but like will be fine. You're gonna spread it to other people who will probably die. So, just fuck you, like absolutely. That's all.
There's a lot of this week is somehow less political, but also a lot more fuck yous than usual, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people can see it, but I can, and I love that that bag is basically breathing in the corner of your room at all times.
Yeah. It's like the third entity in this room that just like senses the ambient anger.
Yeah. It's the iron lung of animosity just
Yeah. The plastic lung. We might need a fuck you corner.
yeah.
I have a lot of just fuck yous this week.
So before we get into other topics like this, I think we should get into a topic like the Matrix. First off, have you thought of a Matrix handle?
Of a Matrix handle?
Yeah, if you were in Zion, if you got woken up from this cool, perfect world that we're in right now, and were put into a grimy underground world, what do you think your handle you would adopt would be?
Ooh. I'm really trying to rack my brain because my mom actually, when we homeschooled, she taught me a lot of Latin, so I know I can think of something that's like very stupid and good. Maybe something kind of basic like Gloria. That's just the first one that comes to mind.
You want to be the doctor who gets stabbed with a scalpel style character, the Maggie.
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody's got like a dozer, and she's like, "Oh, Maggie."
I'm Ryan. Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, that'd be fine with me.
I think I would want to go extra ostentatious and go with like Big Blaster or something like that. Something that takes a long time to say, so that when people are trying to like tell me something urgent, they have to go through a big line of text first.
Hey, Big Blaster!
Big Blaster!
That would be good. I don't know why, but I keep thinking that Neo, probably just because they're similar. Whenever I think of him, I think his name is Deo. Like God, which I don't like. That's where my brain goes.
How about Wiki Feet? That's a pretty good tag.
Ooh. Yeah, that's good.
We got to pull wiki feet out of the matrix.
I like that. Or hashtag.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. I have to let my cat out real quick. He's gonna start scratching on the door.
Oh, okay.
You wanna go out? I will let you out.
Madison's cat is 22 years old, which in cat years is, I think, somewhere between 9,000 and 12,000 years old, which for a cat means that all of their bones are made of chalk and they're essentially a tarp laid over that chalk.
Mm-hmm.
So cats that age need to get what they want. My cat was only 17 and it had full reign of a chair that it just made disgusting because it would sleep on it all the time and not clean itself. I don't know what happened
Cats,
to that chair.
old cats are nasty. They just truly stopped caring. He has stopped cleaning himself. He has like little cat dreads all over his body that we have to try and like shave off or get off every once in a while. And he fully will go use his litter box and he gives no shits about like shaking off his paws. You know how sometimes they're like kind of finicky and they'll like do
Yeah.
this thing? No. There's litter everywhere in the house that he goes. Like on my bed, I'll come in and there will just be a little pile of like litter sand in the little corner that he sleeps in, and it's just that's where he was, I guess. He likes to
Yeah.
sleep on the vent. The vent is covered in litter. It's gross.
Fat cats and old cats really like to just track that shit around.
Yeah, but like you said, he deserves to get everything he wants. So
Yeah.
who am I going to deny him
In these
the
trying times,
the
we
fun
need
of
to
just
watch
being a
out.
grubby little asshole?
Yeah. All right, I've completed my rabbit lunch,
Okay, good.
and now I can move on to my beer lunch.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through my beer lunch.
Um, yeah, unusual for me, but I did eat a breakfast today of gray slop that tastes great, but uh, out of consideration for people who watch this, that one meal will never be on this because it's overnight oats with like peanut butter and various other secret ingredients,
Yeah.
uh, and it just looks like movie gruel, like something that you would feed Harry Potter under a staircase or something. So it's not
But
fun to look at.
delicious.
Yeah. Um,
I made an English breakfast, or I tried to make with what my parents had in the refrigerator in an English breakfast, which they didn't really have any of the actual necessities. So I just made eggs with like blistered tomatoes.
yeah.
That's about it.
You'll be able to see that image on at Vegeta42069 because that really did look tasty. Uh, so what classifies as an English breakfast? Is it just like a breakfast-based crudité kind of thing? Like, is it
I think it's, from my understanding, it's made up of a couple of like specific ingredients. So
okay?
it's like a not smorgasbord, but it's like a big plate, and it'll be like not over easy, but like eggs with a runny yolk, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and then you'll have beans are one of the things that it has to have. I think like blood sausage is what it's
Okay.
called. Um, Either bacon or like another kind of sausage link. I'm not sure what that how it's different from the blood sausage just comes in like little patty things, I think.
Mhm.
And then the blistered tomatoes and then toast. And I think that and mushrooms, like sauteed mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the only version I've ever really seen, I think, was called an Irish breakfast, and it's not the joke version. That's an Irish coffee,
Yeah.
but Though those are good. If you like whiskey and coffee like I do, putting them together can be pleasant. It's also the opposite. You should have a hot mimosa to balance that out because it will make you not want to speak anymore with how acidic that gets. But the Irish breakfast that I remember seeing was like uh, I don't know what kind of sausage, but it was like a fresh sausage, like an Irish version of grits, like a sort of a like a grain meal kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think there was bacon. I think it sounds like the sort of trashier version of what you're describing, though. Like it was basically grits. It was like a bangers and mash style thing, but it had some other components to it that I'm forgetting. Um, but anything that starts to feel like it could be put on top of poutine, I tend to like. Okay, so
Oh yeah.
I think it might have actually been like a biscuit kind of situation. But
That sounds
yeah,
good.
a non-gravy biscuits and gravy. I'm in for something like that.
Any kind of biscuits or yeah. I actually for some reason for pretty much all of my life up until the last like 3 years, I did not my cat wants back in. Um I didn't like
Damn.
breakfast. I don't have any other choice other than to meet his demands right at this minute. But I didn't like breakfast until like 3 years ago, and now I
Huh.
really like breakfast. So
Uh,
I'll leave you with that if I attend to.
so when I was, I'm gonna say 15, a friend of mine and I, when I lived in hillbilly land, north of Seattle, an area called Snohomish. Oh, what a beautiful man! Uh, so I lived in an area called Snohomish, and I lived in an area just to the side of it called Clearview, and Clearview had a cafe that served biscuits and gravy, and I at that point in my life had never really cared that much about biscuits and gravy, but I had made something like it on occasion. So it was like the first year of high school, I want to say, and or it was the second year of high school, but the first year of like the campus that I was moved to because I moved around a lot for school stuff. And a close friend of mine and I went to that cafe, and there were, I want to say there were four people sitting at a table near us. Three of them, all of the men of the family, looked like different sized version of the same person. So there was like an older man with a beard in overalls. There was a medium sized man without a beard in overalls, and there was a egg shaped boy in overalls at the end of the table. And then there was I assume a mother or a wife or both at the table with them. And they went around the table, and every single one of them ordered biscuits and gravy, kind of
What?
like in a normal voice. But when they got to the egg-shaped boy, and he was probably like, and had to be like 10, because I remember thinking, oh, that's a pretty young kid to be ordering biscuits and gravy, and I was like 15. And they got to him, and he ordered a biscuits and gravy. And it was a formative moment in my life where I realized that, like, not only is that not a cartoon character, but a real person, but they also live very close to, like, the city. And I don't know. It's a treasured memory, let's say.
That's really good. I absolutely love the picture of a family around the table ordering the exact same meal. I don't know why, but in my head that's like wrong and should
Right?
never be done.
Yeah, it feels like at that point, wouldn't it just be a meal that you make at home? Because you're all going to
Yeah.
eat the same thing. I feel weird ordering the same thing as people at a restaurant.
Me
Like,
too.
uh
Also, it reduces the chances that you'll get to try the other
huh.
things.
Yeah, that's the thing is for real food perverts like us, there's always the chance of like, oh, they're not going to finish that whole meal. Like, I
I just want
see.
a little bite.
If I wait, I got some of this coming to me at the end of this meal. But I have taken home so many other people's like half a French fry order because they didn't want it. Like, it's a lot of people don't like quote unquote yesterday bites, and those people are missing out because I will fully recook that shit into another meal. I think I did that with that poutine we got at the Nerd Cafe because
Yeah,
didn't
that
we?
was good poutine
We
too.
like split that up and crammed it. I don't know.
Yeah, that was like, was it like duck fat poutine or duck meat or something? There was duck
Yeah,
involved.
it was really
Duck
good.
gravy. Yeah. Any kind of poutine, I'm pretty on board.
Yeah, I have the fixins for 2 servings of poutine right now, and I'm just making plans for when that's going to happen.
How do you just get like frozen fries and then
Yeah,
make it those?
I I haven't taken the time to learn how to properly make French fries, so I just take something that is easy for that part.
Well, you gotta wait for your potatoes to grow first.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how that goes. I didn't. So, quick gripe about the weather because we're both 80 years old now. I went outside earlier because I was like, man, it's fucking hot already for being the 9th. And so, like, I've had air circulating and stuff like that a little more just to keep it cool. What I discovered is because of our tree shade, the air circulating in is actually like already very cool for
Mhm.
outside. It's like 85 degrees when you get outside of our tree shade, and uh it is May 9th, which means uh like summer weather has hit the Seattle area like 3 months, 4 months early. Like it's insane. Like
Yeah.
a decade ago, it wasn't summer in this area until mid August, and it lasted for about a month and a half. And
Oh, wow.
now we're getting to that same mid August weather we used to get, like in spring, which used to be our rainy season, and now we're just fucked with heat. So that's fun.
Mhm.
Like people keep talking about murder hornets, and first off, go fuck yourself. That's nothing. But also, like, I mean, they exist, but if anything, we should be focusing on that as like a product of global warming, because the climate that those things come from in Japan is just on the same kind of border as we are here, but hotter. So the fact that they have
Yeah.
slowly made it over here is actually not surprising because we're making it perfectly habitable for them. And aside from that, last I heard, I think Natalie was looking this up. It was like 2018. They knew that there was like a small colony of them in British Columbia already, but there were so few of them that it doesn't really matter. And it looks like that's still the case. Like the actual hornets that they have found are like literally in the like less than 10 range, uh,
Mm.
like anywhere. And it's a complete non-issue from all of the reports that I've heard. It's just that they exist,
Yeah.
which kind of explains why there are like 2 pictures of them and that's it. But it seems an awful lot like something that got popular because, boy, it's not that other news. uh,
It's a
anyway,
break. It's just a little lighthearted break from
yeah,
the.
you will never see a murder hornet, but if you do, it's not like you won't know it. They're like they're like the length of a finger. Like, of course you're not gonna want to hang out near that shit. Um, but also, if you don't live in British Columbia, the chances of that are about 0%. Um, in fact, if you live in Japan and don't live in the part of the country where those hang out, your chances are about 0%. So, like, other than being an ecological problem that we should probably take care of, there is no issue. Anyway, uh, that is in my hey, fuck off news for me.
Yeah.
Uh, it sure seems like that's taking away from kind of pointing out a lot of the actual shitty things that are happening, especially in our country lately. So maybe don't worry about that part.
Yeah.
On the topic of murder hornets and weird bugs, I want your rundown of the Matrix. So give me your rundown of the third Matrix movie, please.
Okay. I have to pull up my notes. I'll preface all of this by saying, unless I'm particularly devoted or interested in the movie, I'm a very bad movie watcher.
Oh, that's fine.
So this is going to be lacking.
Honestly, your enjoyment was probably higher if you weren't paying that much attention.
I fully agree with that. Before I get into this, my cat climbed out the window. I'm actually gonna be with me to make sure that he's like alive and okay. I don't know where he went. Okay.
Huh. Do you need to find your cat?
No, I'll just open the window wider so he can get in.
I'm surprised a cat that old can jump.
Going out the window is kind of a normal thing for him, but okay. I just wasn't sure if he was hanging out or what he was doing. Okay. So, my notes are titled Over My Big Dead Ass.
Yep.
Which is honestly probably the highlight of the movie for me. I assume you know what I'm talking about, the scene. Yeah. There's a guard man who they want to go to a place and he's like, over my big dead ass. And I just thought that was really good. Other than that,
they really obviously, but they really stepped up every single piece of the religious bash you over the head stuff in that one.
Yeah. It so many different elements of it I can't think of the specific book. God, what is that book? I feel like I read a book in 7th or 8th grade where there's different people, you know how there's the Oracle character who's this old woman who lives in her house, and then there's the small family in the train station, and they all are kind of representing different sort of things. I feel like I read a book that was very similar to that, but one thing they also stepped up a lot was the prop dentistry.
Yeah. Yeah, really the train man really had a lot of business going on.
I swear his teeth changed in every single scene. They looked very different to me, because the first time they were more protruding, and the second time it was still protruding, but it seemed like it was only one side. Anyway, it was real. There's a lot going on there, and I really enjoyed that. Other than that, to your point about it kind of hitting you over the head with the religion stuff, it also seemed to be, especially towards the end, I was like, this is straight up Star Wars.
Yep. It turns into Star Wars, and it turns into the Bible at the end of that movie. Yeah. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I kind of zoned out for a while and was looking at my phone, and then I looked up and there's this metal hanger opening with those big doors, and people are shooting their blaster pistols at each other, and it's even Star Wars noises.
Yeah.
I was like, this has turned fully into Star Wars, and I would appreciate some lightsabers or something. You should just go all the way. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've seen those movies, and every time the red vine shows up, I don't expect it to be there. It's very it's a good covert food. Those movies, the first one is always kind of surprising with like, oh, for something that came out in like the year 2000, their mechanical design looks good. Um, and I have a lot of respect for the non-human, like the practical effects that are in that are good, and the I mean, they're fine. They get, I feel, progressively worse throughout the series. I think the practical effects are good in the first movie. Um, I think uh, the mechanical, like digital effects are good throughout, but even those kind of degrade a little bit through the movie. But by the time you're in the around the world fight scene in 2, you're in like silly putty land, and then when you get to the Dragon Ball fight at the end of 3, it's just straight up
Yeah.
like that looks like a bad video game 100%. The
Yeah.
like
That the
it's
the
not good.
slow-mo CGI punching is what I put down. I
Yeah.
hate it. The like, oh, it's so slow motion. Look at all these individual raindrops. Isn't it so realistic? And like the slow-mo face reacting to the hand was probably the grossest thing I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
It's it's not good. Like that stuff,
Mm-mm.
I remember it being bad when I first saw it, is how bad it is. Where like at that point, there were video game cutscenes that looked significantly better. Like when you
Yeah.
got to like 2004-ish range, where I think it was 2004-ish when that was out. It's like 2003, I think. Um, there were video games that had cutscenes that were straight up like immensely better than that. Like, uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, that stuff costs a lot of money, but like they had a lot of money put into that movie. Um, so one thing I wanted to note, so that that rain fight, that is maybe the ultimate in shit for that movie. The original version of that, they were trying to decide between all of the Smiths piling together into a giant Smith made out of
Oh
people,
no.
or Godzilla. It was just going to be all of them piled
Made out of
together.
Smith?
Yeah, just a bunch of Smiths formed into a Godzilla that was like just straight up Godzilla. Is that a murder hornet in your room?
It was.
Oh, good.
I'm convinced. Yeah,
um,
I'm glad they didn't do that. That would have been dumb. Real
uh-huh.
bad. uh,
Uh, also, I like how they did better with having the Smiths not just be people with different faces when you got like more than 6 feet away. They
yeah.
were clearly there was still a scene towards the beginning where they busted into the room that Seraph and what's her name, like City, were in.
Yeah.
City also is like I think that word means thirst or something like that.
Hmm.
I think that it has. I made a painting with that title a while back, and it specifically I think is tied to um, like I think it's tied to something in Buddhism, or I might have that slightly mixed up. It's been a while since I made that. It is like the idea of like uh, it's not exactly thirst, but it's like relieving something after it's been parched for a certain amount of time, like more specifically.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a lot of that shit in that movie where it's like, okay, every single person's name and every line in this is an allusion to something, and a lot of those allusions aren't very good. Like, uh, I don't know. I see what they were going for, but people who are huge fans of that movie, unironically, I think maybe aren't caring too much about the part where a lot of what they're doing is a little bit too heavy-handed. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, in the scene where they bust into the room with Seraphin City in it, one of the Smiths in the background is very clearly a different person, and then a few more of them are like people who were dressed up a little better, like fit a little better, and they're all in the like through the doorway that they're coming through. It's like in the background of it. So it's like they'll save a lot of money by putting those people in there, but one of the guys just does not look like him, and it's really funny. It's not nearly as funny as the second movie where there's a bunch of them that are just some other set of people. I think they should have just used different people. Like, it doesn't have to all look like him. It actually is kind of dumb to make it all look exactly the same.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not that I hate the idea of 1,000 Hugo Weavings hanging out, but it's
Man,
strange.
he's very well casted. There's something about his face that's just very like incredibly off-putting.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the like the not cosmetic, but like the prop dentistry, but he's got some serious teeth on him. Especially like in the last scene, there's a lot of real close face things.
There's I think Lord of the Rings got really lucky being made by somebody who is doing it in New Zealand, because New Zealanders, like that version of sort of the pretty close to Australian look, often has that sort of like angle and like mouth structure that could be like weird elf people. And I think it just ended up working great for all of that stuff. Because him being what, Elrond, I think it is, like he does look weird. Like it just, his face works really well for that. The same way that British people have a habit of incredibly angular faces that work really well for like dumb wizard movies. New Zealand has a great set of like, they're close to human faces.
God. Yeah. Like a David Tennant type of very angular.
Yeah.
I'm a time traveler thing.
It's like the way that Americans oftentimes have a face that says like either like woods people or like soldiers that have been genetically altered to like live only as soldiers. Like it just works because a lot of American people kind of have this weird chud look to them.
Yeah, that is a thing that we have occasionally.
Shave an American soldier's head and you almost certainly have like somebody who could be like repeating loud dumb orders at somebody. Like it just works for us.
Yeah. What else did I write down? I also thought, I mean, this note doesn't really make any difference to anything, but just the context of the Matrix movies and like the worlds that they're set in, it seems so weird that they went straight to like a kung fu thing.
Right? Yeah.
Like that doesn't seem to fit.
So I was talking to a friend of mine, Jason. I think he's the only other person in the group that got into like, well, no, I mean, Natalie is very into like weird underground comics and stuff, but it's not that underground. It's just a like sort of a classic comic that is a little bit culty. Like it has a following, but like not a huge one. And it's called like The Invisibles. I read somebody else's copy of it when I was in like high school, I think. And it's The Matrix. Like it's the first Matrix movie is just this comic book like translated into movie form and altered a little bit to like fit storyline elements, but it's literally like the aesthetic, the way everything works, the world building, it's that comic book. And it's kind of clear that once they ran out of like the main chunks of ideas from the comic and moved into the second and third movie, you can see like them grappling with how do we keep this story going and the aesthetic that these other people have kind of led the way on while still making it our own thing. In some ways, like if I were a more cynical person, I would actually, I mean, not that I'm not, but more cynical, I would say that, like, I don't have any distrust or dislike towards the Wachowskis, but it feels a tiny bit like in order to avoid infringement in future lawsuits, making the second and third movie had to happen so it was their own thing. Where that first movie is really cohesive and like it's not a terrible movie, it's just very weird. The second and third movie are kind of terrible, and I think that part of that was them having to think of like somebody else's storyline and how it would progress past where it was. Like all the Zion stuff is just like there's so many cool things you can do with that idea, and the Animatrix does a much better job of having like people who like, not to be shitty, but are like really good like visionary style artists working with really good animators and making a world around this idea. You can see the difference between people who are great at making films and people who are great at making stories, and where the Wachowskis are maybe filmmakers first and not writers or like people who should work without editing as like a major part of their process. Because I think some of the stuff they did after The Matrix, like The Matrix is good. I wish they would have credited the people who did those ideas first. I don't have their names in front of me, but I'll try to find a way to include their names in something that we do, just so it's out there. But the I'll try and find a comic book cover that we can put in our post, so people can at least do that like on their own. Go see their original work. It's totally the like latex suit, plug into the Matrix, do all this stuff. It's very clear, but anyway, I don't know. I like the Matrix in its way. I think that it's very stupid but enjoyable. The second and third movie are a fucking train wreck.
Hot trash. Yeah.
And the Jesus-ing just gets harder and harder the further you get into it.
Yeah, I think I would have generally the same things to say about it. I liked the first one probably the best. Increasingly less as time went on.
The first one also has like elements of a horror movie that I like.
Yeah, I did like from just the very beginning scene where he's in that interrogation, that has a very different feel to me. I don't know, like from that first scene I really was not sure what to expect, and I do like that kind of like that horror movie kind of uncertainty that seemed not to really exist in the last ones. They just got really sci-fi-y, Jesus-y.
I feel like the second and third movie basically took that scene at the end of the first movie where he flies up into the sky and said, this is it. Yeah.
I mean, the third one, the end fight, that's pretty much what that is. The whole time it was just really dumb rain fighting.
Well,
too much rain, by the way.
That one end fight in the first movie, I think, is earned enough to where it's fine. Like, it's still dumb. It's still a character being like, oh, sweet. Like, it has a lot of like wish fulfillment and not a lot of like, I don't know. It feels kind of forced in a weird way.
Yeah.
Where like if they were more into making a good movie and not sort of making a like power fantasy, it actually probably would have been a better ending to the whole series.
Well, I mean, the entire romance arc is wish fulfillment.
Yeah, the romance arc
sucks. It's made out of nothing. Mm-hmm. I still get to the last. I wrote down a couple of notes about how disappointing Trinity's death scene was. Spoiler alert, but yeah, like I still got to the end of that, and I don't like care about her dying because I don't understand why she even likes him, or like why they're in love. I don't understand the relationship at all. I'm like, okay, I guess that's over.
The headcanon of they just like because it's like sex looking into a mirror is about all I can figure for their love story.
They're like, yeah, that is like, oh, we fall in love because we're in proximity to each other and we're like important people in our own stories, I guess. But yeah, that whole thing was pretty mediocre.
Yep. I also like watching them all that close together really reminds me of how like the Joey Pants character in the first movie, Cypher.
Yeah.
Like that is such a better, even though he's incredibly like shitty at like almost cackling villainy in parts of it, he's so much better as a villain than any of the later stuff.
You don't like Colonel Sanders?
Well, and Colonel Sanders isn't even a villain, he's just kind of like there. And the Colonel Sanders mecha face at the end of the third movie is one of those, like, this makes no sense. Like,
all right. I think I have to shut this window because it's getting incredibly bright in this room.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try and locate my cat.
Okay. I will be here talking and refilling my water. But first, I'm getting like a heat headache. So let's call this a slight intermission. If you're listening to this, maybe you want to pee real quick.
Yeah, let's all pee together, I guess.
Yay. I'm sitting on my headphones a little bit. Oh, there's cat business going on. Some ASMR for some waterheads.
You're done with the window thing.
That cat does seem to have a pretty active personality considering how old it is.
What do you want?
Gonna grab some weird ice cream cones.
Ooh. Wait, I'm gonna give us some really cool cat ASMR.
Ooh.
Want a treat? Want a treat?
This is what you came to see. Weird candy ice cream cones and cat treats.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear it.
Oh, we can hear it.
Okay, good. They're very nice. Crunch, crunch. I don't know what he did, but he somehow got off the roof and onto our front doorstep.
Wait, are you on a second floor?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I assumed that house was one story. I don't know why.
It's very weird. It's kind of like a half story. It's not like the way that our house is laid out, you walk in and it immediately goes up some stairs, but our kitchen is like on that second level and the living room is on the first level, but it's all open.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So kind of. I'm a little ways up. Like I probably wouldn't want to jump. But
Okay.
apparently the cat did.
So I've found the right way to eat these. If you bite all of the cones off of the ice creams,
Okay.
it tastes kind of like a butter cookie is more or less the flavor.
Ooh.
If you eat the cones with the ice creams, it tastes like garbage.
Mm-hmm.
They're flavoring like, a lot of Jelly Bellies, they advertise them as like eat them together and they work okay. The problem with this is that every single jelly bean thing in the ice cream stuff essentially has a lighter version of the flavor of the popcorn jelly bean attached to it. So
I don't
like,
like that.
because the popcorn jelly bean basically does taste like a butter cookie, but with like an emphasis on the butter and just saltiness as opposed to the like cookie-ish flavor.
Yeah.
Um, and this one, it's basically just like a slightly less sweet version of the popcorn, which I'm fine with. But if you eat that with vanilla, chocolate, and trust me, they're not normal tasting, orange or mint chocolate, it is very bad. So if you eat the cones off first, you actually have a pretty okay, like two small jelly bean things.
Yeah. From what you told me, the cone flavor sounds very good by itself.
Yeah.
And the other flavors sound fine by themselves.
But I like to eat things slow anyway, so having it be like bite the heads off of all of these ice cream cones and then you have miniature like sugar candies, that works
Yeah.
fine for how I like to do it.
It's funny you mentioned eating things slow because I have divined my
Yeah.
licorices and then I think I tore them into maybe 16ths.
Okay.
Anyway, I have like a licorice shred on my desk.
It's like how I always take the M&Ms at work when, shared food is something you can do, and arrange them into like color coding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like one step away for these habits of just holding food with our tiny raccoon hands into a pool and rinsing it all off one by one.
Mm-hmm.
But without the devastation of trying to rinse off cotton candy.
That would be very devastating.
Have you seen that video?
I don't think I have.
Do you have access to the internet?
No. Oh, do you want my like live reaction to this? Is that why you're asking?
Look up raccoon and cotton candy. It should be high up on the list.
Oh, wait, maybe I have seen this. This sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't picture it. So
it's the shortest story of tragedy you'll ever see.
Oh no! Oh, that's so... the tiny hands like rummaging around in the water, like what happened?
Yeah.
So what have I done? Man, I'm bookmarking that for later.
To be fair, I don't think raccoons should probably be slamming cotton candy. So it's probably not the
Probably
worst thing.
not.
But at the same time, it clearly is very sad that cotton candy disappeared.
He's like so looking forward to this pile of big old. It looks very compact too.
Yeah.
And oh, it like bath bombs into the water.
The only upside I see to that is that, like, that clearly compacted cotton candy was given to it. Somebody had to take that video. And if that person has a soul, they then gave it, like, some peanuts or something. Because, like, you can't just watch that and then turn around and walk away. If they did, they're the villain of the century.
That sounds like a great transition into another fuck you corner.
Yep.
Who that will feature another villain of the century. So this last week, a video was circulating either Facebook or Twitter. I don't know. I didn't watch it. I didn't see it. But this girl from Idaho, I don't know. She looks like kind of young, but like old enough to have a brain and a heart. And she's like wearing some boxing gloves, and she's fucking boxing her dog. Like, not just play fighting, but like straight up just like hitting him in the snout. Which, if you have dogs, that's fucking mean. If you like, I mean, not even if you have dogs. If you care about anything, that's fucking mean. And yeah, she's just over and over boxing it, and I didn't watch it because it was gonna make me upset. But
I could see a world where having a large dog, you could pat it on the sides of its head with boxing gloves, and
that's
it would
what I
love
was.
it.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting because
Yeah.
I play fight with my dogs all the time.
Yeah, totally. That's what bigger dogs are good for.
Yes.
In like a social sense, is that when they like try to nip at you, you can put your hands in their mouth and like be an asshole to them.
Yes.
And they love it. Like that's part of the fun
That's
of having
what they
dogs.
like. And that's kind of what her, defense was. Is like, oh, we play fight with him. But you can tell, I guess I did see like maybe a 2-second clip of the video, and there's like the dog is crying. Like, it's not having a good time.
Cool.
So the only reason I bring that up is because that person was from Idaho. So Idahoans, get your fucking shit together. Can we please stop? Like, I'm not trying to be an ambassador for Idaho or anything, but like, please.
Yeah, you guys are on your course to be the next fucking Mississippi.
If
you guys
we truly are, we're not coming out of this pandemic shit ahead by any means. And it's just, God damn it, can we please get our shit together? I don't know. When I think of Idaho, especially, I mean, shitty people can be anywhere, obviously, but Idaho, I feel, a lot of the state is national parks, and people care about animals and nature generally.
Yeah.
I like, don't fucking abuse your pets. So that's all. Like, it kind of has a good-ish ending. The Idaho Humane Society like reached out to her, found who she was, and they said that they sent someone to like discuss with her. I don't know what that means. Here, I think I did read that you can get jail time up to like 6 months for animal abuse, something in that. I don't know if that will happen, especially considering apparently her father is a sheriff for some police department here.
So it won't.
So it's not going to happen. Yeah. But honestly, I don't think it needs to, because she's had to delete everything off of everything. Like, the internet did its job, kind of. I don't know. But yeah.
The living in a world with visibility and not understanding
the repercussions of
morality in some ways does catch up to you if you are enough of a asshole, especially to animals. People don't like it.
Yeah, that shit'll get you in trouble real fast. And I feel a small part of me feels bad for her just because she does look a little bit younger, and that can't be fun. Like, getting that kind of notoriety. for something so shitty, but also don't do something so shitty and don't film it. Like,
Right.
anyway.
I don't know. It's the like animal abuse version of like having a heated gamer moment and having it be on video where it's like you're not like undeserving of people criticizing you for this. Like,
Right. I mean, yeah.
Really, I think the key is we just get more animals playing esports so that when people have those heated gamer moments, they actually resonate instead of it just being people saying like, "Oh, well, they come from a culture that that it's acceptable in," kind of bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm surprised, or not, not surprised, but you would think just younger people would understand this. But like, I guess I understand being more comfortable now with just like filming your everyday whatever the fuck. But if that's your everyday whatever the fuck, then yeah, you're deserving of that criticism.
Yeah.
If you're that comfortable just like putting something out like that on the internet and you think that, you know, it's whatever. You deserve it, I guess.
There are aspects of the internet and information dispersal that I think are really beneficial. It's just that we didn't set up a structure to have that information dispersal be, I guess, not even necessarily highly regulated, just like advised at a young age as to what is acceptable and what isn't. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, the negatives from the internet seem like they're so much higher in some ways than the positives, but
I mean,
it's
it
kind
could
of too
be,
late for that.
yeah. In this case, that could still be true, also, because I mean, if she's like abusing her dog, in private, and nobody knows, like nobody's gonna know. But now she's posting it, so maybe she changes. The other thing, now that I think about it, that's upsetting is like someone was filming it, and if
Yep.
she's doing that to her dog, like her family's doing that to the dog too, or at
Mhm.
least they know what's going on.
They have at least given her tacit permission to
Yeah,
do that to the dog.
yeah. So yeah, bad bad times for Idaho. Just get your shit together, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish we would, but
And I mean, everybody has to get their shit together at some point in life, but for some people, that is when they die. So, you know,
yeah. We need to do it sooner rather than later, because if we don't do it, Knowledge Bite might give us away to the
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, maybe get on that, Idaho. Anyway, another fun uh anecdote for this week. This week was full of like pretty shitty things.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is that we are now in the space where people holding out hope that like maybe my rent will not be fucked over for this like month. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll do something because like last week we were in the sweet spot of like most places give you like 5 days past. You could still hold out hope that like the government gave a shit about anybody, just on the basis of like they're talking about plans for making things work. They're talking about a second stimulus. They're talking about all this shit. But I think by the fifth, people were finally just like, oh, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I'm now in the spot where like I definitely know friends of friends. No, there are friends of friends. There are people that I know of, not just stories and stuff of people like being told that they are evicted when this is over. Like they are no longer living where they're living and it's a countdown to when this is done. And that shit's like the worst because now it's just, well, we know you can't pay, so we can't evict you till the restrictions lift.
Yeah.
Which is
Like, how is
like,
that better?
yeah, it's better in the sense that you're not putting them on the street when like we have a lockdown, but like that should not be the like negotiation at all. It should be negotiating whether or not you're going to like bring charges against somebody who threatens that, not that they get to say it and have it hold true. And people who can't afford their rent can't afford a fucking lawyer. Like, you're not going to take those people to court. I am really happy that the last week, at least, I have seen a lot more people talking about how pushing people into work is essentially telling people exactly how important they are, which is not. Like, if we decide that you, oh, sorry, I'm getting some important notifications from Domino's. Oh,
Oh.
ooh, the idea of like balancing out poor people as like what we're going to throw into the gears to make sure our country can still remain capitalist and remain, I guess, successful in quotation marks. That's really gross. And also having a more public set of murders of black people by white people for no reason. Like, that stuff has been stepping up its game lately, and that's fucking terrible also. It's not like that wasn't already happening, but now it's over like people feeling like there are no laws anymore, so like why wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
It's also disgusting. Like, I don't know. Like, we have to keep talking about that stuff, and like we have a slight voice that we're putting out there, so I think it's important we do too.
Yeah.
But it is really disheartening to see what, you know, we already knew was going to happen when they don't take care of the populace at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say quickly on then what you said about the very public murders of black people and like really nothing being done about it until months later. I read a really interesting thread on Twitter. I like how me on this podcast is basically just telling everyone what I read on Twitter that week. But I thought it was really helpful. I don't remember the account name, but it was a guy who was just like, hey, just a reminder, when you see the videos of this shit happening on Twitter, don't share that shit. Don't retweet videos of black people or brown people getting murdered. Like, that doesn't help. And I would wager that the people of color in your life don't want to see that shit in their sphere. But that was one of the points that this guy made. But also, he made a real maybe I'll find it and post it on our Instagram thing, but he made a long thread about how now that we're seeing this stuff so consistently, we need to kind of, I don't know, be a little introspective. And do you only like care about these things when you see videos of the violent things happening? Like, you have to care about it outside of just seeing like people getting murdered on your timeline every day.
Right.
It has to be outside of that. And is like that the only interaction you're going to have with those topics during your week, is just because it popped up on your Twitter? Or is it going to be outside of that? So I thought that was a good point to make, just because it's so easy to be like on Twitter, and I know that I've even done it in the past, just like out of like outrage or whatever, just retweeted it and been like, fuck this shit, but that doesn't help. And yeah, that's all.
I think that the safe place to sit with that stuff is to let people who do have a voice that their opinion really matters, people who are from the communities where that stuff is happening, go see what they're saying about it, because they actually have something to say. They're not just trying to repeat it as like, hey, I don't like blank and I'm gonna prove the opposing side wrong with this. Another thing is like with a lot of things, following places like New York accounts and stuff will help. The Decolonize account is really good at kind of pointing out a lot of reasons why you should be upset and places where you can make a difference, as opposed to like just putting out like what is essentially like, I guess, like crisis porn or whatever.
Yeah.
They've been focusing a lot on like the unfair treatment of ethnicities in or non-white ethnicities specifically in New York, and like the subway system and their like stop and frisk stuff and all that. Like that stuff's really important. And they also point out a lot of like issues with like union busting shit that our country is getting real into again. Um, it's not gonna probably have a lot of the information you might need on like what happens to people when that starts occurring, or it's not going to give you a lot of history on like murders in unions and stuff like that to keep them quiet. But it's still going to give you information that is worth knowing and places where you can actually do something about it. I know signing petitions and shit like that is not necessarily like useful to a lot of people, but it can be a good idea just to try and push on that stuff to make sure that like people who have a position to know that other people are concerned about it do eventually see a number of people like getting together on that kind of stuff. Petitions are kind of a mixed bag, but generally speaking, any show of like solidarity on that stuff is a good idea, even if it doesn't lead to much.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I do think that like the Act Blue style stuff, it's not always great, but it is often pretty helpful, and their organization is good. But it can be really frustrating signing petitions on stuff like that and having a button that says, tell us the amount you're going to give us. It is helpful to pay into that kind of stuff. Like that's how I did a lot of my Sanders support during his presidential run. But they always have a button that says pay another amount. And they also have buttons that say pay this amount. And those are not required. Like, I think that it unfortunately is sort of kryptonite for older people who don't know how internet forms work. But you can say nothing about payment and click the submit button and it will go through. That's not a requirement. And just anybody who doesn't realize that, like, it's incredibly easy to put your name and your area code and make sure that there is something out there. Anyway,
Yeah.
not an incredibly useful bit of advice, just a like, I don't know, think about it. And
Yeah, I think that's good. I agree with that. I would just say, as opposed to interacting with like the crisis porn of this shit
yeah,
happening, like find the organizations or the people who are making change about it and
mm-hmm.
bring attention to them and not like the pain of the situation.
Well, I will admit that I argue with people online uh, probably on like a weekly basis, and it never amounts to anything. Some of them are entertaining.
It'll kill a
Uh,
good 30 minutes.
yeah. I had one person the other week. Never do this. That's my advice. So I don't know. I consume a medium amount of content that is based on like social action or just I don't know. Like a lot of people get their news in this modern time. It's not through TV channels because a lot of people don't have those.
Yeah.
It ends up being through like extensive clips of TV channels and like radio shows and podcasts and stuff. And you have to, understand what is like vetted and what isn't. You have to know who's saying stuff still. It's like any newspaper. If you're going to go read the Epic Times, you're a rube. You're reading somebody's like op-eds and treating it like news. But if you're, doing your due diligence and not like watching Sam Cedar and saying everything that he says is right, but watching it and thinking that's an interesting idea. But then, just trying to have some level of like thinking for yourself. Yeah. I think that is pretty much the way that people in our age range get news at this point. Same thing for Twitter, but it can be even more of a pain in the ass on Twitter, and I don't suggest it.
Despite me this whole time saying, I saw on Twitter. Let me tell you about this thread I saw on Twitter.
I mean, I get a lot of stuff off YouTube, and I wouldn't suggest that unless you know what the fuck you're doing. But the key to that kind of stuff and actually getting information from it is to look at what people are saying. And this will work into my segment I'm doing here in a few minutes. Look at what people are saying and then do the research. Like go through, look at another 10 sources that are talking about this thing. If there's like 2 sources and that's it, it's either not real or it's like the Tara Reid stuff with Joe Biden where people are, for some reason, just acting like, oh, people claiming that stuff don't matter right now. Yeah. I imagine you have something to say about that. But all I want to say on this topic is go to more sources. And if your sources are like either right or left wing solely like YouTube channels, and that's all they do, maybe find some more sources to back it up that are more trustworthy. You might not trust regular like news media type stuff, but they will typically report on something. They'll just put their spin on it. And if you go to like the Associated Press or something that's a little more like unbiased in general and just find the information, you can start making your own like educated guesses at why people are saying what they're saying, because having whataboutism come into everything is a good first sign that it's not being presented truthfully. And that's like Fox News's thing and fucking like if you read Breitbart, that's all they do. Their headlines are whataboutism, and like fuck that. Drudge Report is garbage, and the like Epic Times, I already mentioned that. That's even a fucking newspaper in essence, and that's all op-eds that are like, some people say Trump isn't doing this quite right, but what about Obama's doing this? And it's secretly like he's a black communist or something. It's like, okay. Interesting perspective on somebody who is pretty fucking corporate, but sure. Anyway, what would you like to say about Biden?
God. Actually, before we move on to Biden, I wanted to give a shout out to, while we're talking about like sources of information.
Yeah.
This may or may not be dumb of me, but I really actually enjoy Philip DeFranco's channel.
Okay.
Have you ever watched his video? He does like a 15 to 20 minute kind of like, I can't remember if it's weekly or what it is. I just kind of got back into watching it. Some of it's more like pop culture, but he's covered like what's his name? The Ahmaud Arbery murder recently. He covers that stuff too. And Alex Jones more recently. But it's just like him and his team of 2 or 3, however many people, and it's like he gives his opinion, but when he tells you that he's giving his opinion, or like when he does, he's like, this is my opinion, let me know what you think. So it's very obviously like it's a dude telling you the news, and he'll tell you when it's like his spin, but other than that, it's just a really good resource for like, he gives links and everything to all the stuff that he talks about. So if you're looking for a real quick like rundown of things and an easy way to find other sources, that's a pretty like no-brainer, easy way to do it.
And what was the name again?
His channel is called Philip DeFranco.
Okay.
I think.
I would say something similar about Some News. I think that's a really good show for like. It's still going to have a lot of opinion pieces to some degree. Like it is a very like ultimately left-leaning take on things.
Yeah.
But literally everything they talk about is both linked in their description and they show you the actual articles that they're talking about and reference all of their sources, which that's the thing that news should be doing is giving you real sources for stuff. Like one of the things that bothers me the most about current like opinion piece news is when you oftentimes aren't getting a look at even the most basic like places that they're taking ideas from. They're just kind of saying, well, this is true. And then you're like,
or like
not,
a source says.
yeah, exactly. And then you're not far away from like a Hannity or a fucking Alex Jones. Like Alex Jones has only said in court so far that it's psychic fucking visions that he gets that are the news. Yeah. But that's his real process that he's saying he's doing. And you will never hear that if it's just him doing a show. So, like, you know, citing your sources and showing your sources. He will show headlines. And the best part is when he reads out what he's talking about, like the actual bits of article. First off, not a great reader, which is problematic for somebody who says they're like one of the smartest people on earth. Also, saying you're one of the smartest people on earth, not a good sign. But
just a bad time to tell you I'm one of the smartest people on
earth. He will often read like the first piece of an article and it will contradict exactly what he has just said about the article.
Yeah.
And he'll just pretend like that didn't happen. So
100% most of all, like that's what's fucked up about him is that he'll cite a source. He'll tell you like where it's from, but he just banks on people never looking it up.
Yep.
Which works for him because like that audience is for sure not, you know, fact checking that shit. So
he may or may not be the best when it comes to like propaganda. Like I think he's off the beaten path enough to where his propaganda only works on the part of the population that is looking for like living in a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
But he is maybe the best example of the process of propaganda.
And like, gaslighting.
Oh yeah. Gaslighting everybody who listens, whether they agree with him or not. And then just the ABCs of propaganda procedure of like, I'm going to have like real experts on, and then it's like people who work for him in some fashion.
Yeah.
It's just
he
like,
cites
wow.
articles that are written by InfoWars.
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy.
Makes sense to me, I guess.
I know he comes up a lot on this show, but Paul Joseph Watson was a contractor for InfoWars for like the better part of a decade. And they would constantly use Paul Joseph Watson articles as something not associated with InfoWars to do their like sites off of. And the I think the gay frogs thing is the most popular of those. That was just a thing that he wrote, and then Alex Jones cited the source, and they talked about it together. Like, it's just crazy.
You want to go over this little opinion piece that I wrote, and we'll report it as absolute fact?
And at that point, it's not even an opinion piece. It's him saying that there are chemicals that are not super well known in some things in some like juice boxes, I want to say, and even that was slightly like a lie. And then deciding that juice boxes and how many gay kids there are visibly in the world is proof that the way that the plastics are being processed, and I think Bill Gates came into that one too.
Of course.
That is actually turning kids gay. So when you're giving your kids a juice box, just remember you're turning them into left-wing like terrorists. It's
Yep.
crazy. But they also talk about, you know, drag queens being transsexual and also eating children. So who the fuck knows?
They do, clearly. All of it.
Yeah.
Everything. Oh, God.
It's like if somebody took the Bat Boy stories from tabloids in the 90s and said, "Oh, this is real. This is accurate. We should make millions and millions of dollars off of just talking about Bat Boy." I would do that, by the way. That would be a great show.
At least you'd be talking about like a real thing that happened.
There's a picture of Bat Boy on the back of a motorcycle. I think coming over the border from Mexico. That is one of the best like photos of anything ever. It might have just been a sighting in Mexico, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't care what this article says. Also, it's again, it's just creative story writing, but the whole story is a Bat Boy sighting, and it's like the worst Photoshop of like, hey, like in a helmet. It's awesome. Bat Boy, underrated icon of the last century.
Agreed. And the unofficial mascot of this week's podcast.
Oh, fuck yeah. Bat Boy's great. My garlic chicken bat, the like icon I use as my, I think it's my well, it's my tag for like graffiti stuff, but it's hard to read, so I don't think I'm in any danger of people discovering that. But Garlic Chicken Bat is my like logo character that I use for everything, and it's also based off of Bat Boy. Like that's what I wanted, was something that was both Bat Boy and food, because that's like the two things that you can mash together.
The perfect intersection of all the interests.
Yeah, Bat Boy and food. That middle diagram is just this.
There you go. That's good.
But yeah, actually, have you seen Bat Boy? Just out of curiosity, like, you should type that in just to get a little taste.
A little taste.
The face is so much better than you think it'll be. If
I just search Bat Boy, is it going to come up?
Probably. Yeah, like an image search of Bat Boy.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ. This is horrendous. I hate it.
Let me see the one you found. That's not the reaction I was expecting. Oh, yeah, that's Bat Boy.
Really?
Yeah. But imagine.
I think it's something about it looks like a baby child, and I don't like that part about it is unsettling. And
it's not Batman, but imagine that face just photoshopped onto somebody on a motorcycle.
Oh, good. Okay, that would be more. I'd be okay with that. Ugh. There's too much Bat Boy fanfic. I don't like it.
Ooh. Well, I know what we're going to be reading in our Natalie Shady Fiction Warehouse.
Ooh. Oh. Wait. There's a musical.
Yeah, that sounds right.
All right. Well, I know what my plans are for the next 2 weeks.
Well, and now you see why my garlic chicken bat is cute instead of just like man, I got a lot of notes on this thing. Do you have anything else to talk about before I go into this screed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think I have anything new to say about the Biden stuff. Tara Reid did an interview with Megyn Kelly that I don't think has been released yet. Like, excerpts have been.
Yeah.
The ones that I've seen, fine. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have anything new to say about this in particular.
Other than centrist Democrats seem really interested in believing her until her happens to be in opposition to what they feel like talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think this is going to get the fuck, what was her name in the Kavanaugh hearing?
Blasey
Dean.
Ford.
Yeah, I think this is going to get that sort of treatment where like, well, no, not as much. It seems like people are pretty uniformly uh for and well, or not uniform, like on the left it seemed like people were pretty um rallied behind her, but I feel like she's probably going to get like this Megyn Kelly interview and not much else is going to happen. I think this is just going to kind of die down, and then maybe in 10 years it'll be a talking point, or like people will mention. I don't know. Actually, in 10 years, I don't know if they will, because Biden's not going to live for 10 years. So,
no, it'll be like all the fucking terrible stuff that what's his name did. The man, what's his name? The renegade. The guy who ran with Palin.
Oh, John McCain.
Yeah, John McCain is a colossal piece of shit. Like, the stuff that he's done to our country is terrible. And he died a hero, basically, because he said some stuff that wasn't pro-Trump exactly.
Yeah, you had like the minimum courage and then also, I guess, war hero thing, but
he wasn't. He apparently they actually did a dollop on this. A dollop, if you're not aware, is very well researched, and it's written by people who know what they're talking about and presented by comedians. So it's the version of podcast news that's not. It's still like got a lot of opinion inserts, but they are telling you information and telling you when it's not true and when it is true. And the John McCain stuff that they talk about is like the amount of planes that he crashed is ridiculous. Like, he basically bought his way into the Air Force because he thought that would be cool and didn't do much of anything. And his only real claim to fame from the military is that he got caught after he crashed his plane. And like, that is shitty. Like, being a POW sucks, and he got fucked up from it. But like, it was also like him being negligent that kind of led him to that space, and not in a Armoud, is that his name? Not in the way of people.
Yeah.
The amount of people I saw defending the people who shot him. That's a real fun time on the internet.
Yeah, I don't fucking even have time to even.
No. There were a lot of people who straight up said there's a lot of black crime in that area, so protecting yourself makes sense. That is the kind of shit that really tells you the commitment to just believing whatever it is that holds up your opinion is going to stick. Yeah. And it's not a totally different feeling when you look at John McCain's history of just like, this guy's terrible. He's done a lot of terrible things to the way our country works. And people touted him as a war hero and ignored the fact that he was a fucking trust fund kid who went and did whatever the fuck he wanted. Like, he's another George W. Bush character. And his version of painting dogs is dying. And people are just like, oh, you got it. He's fine. It's terrible. It sucks. Anyway. Yeah. Also, the people saying at least our current president isn't George W. Bush can suck a dick. George W. Bush killed a lot of people, and he should still be at least fucking shamed for it. He's being held up as like a good president now in comparison, and that's a real bummer. Anyway,
yeah,
that's a short aside.
You may proceed to your screen now. I said all, but I guess just like Yeah, I don't have anything other to say. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit drunk because I did not eat lunch. but, but uh, yeah, fucking. I wish he would tell the truth. I doubt he ever will. I'm sorry, Terry.
Uh-huh.
That's all.
Anyway, this is this thing that so what I'm about to start is something that I want to call. My first idea was stupid because I think I was very tired when I wrote it. Uh, because safe search is not the right wording that I wanted, but I'm going to call this, and I think we should both contribute to this over time.
Yeah.
And I actually have plans for a theme for this. I never made a theme for this podcast because we don't edit it, and it would just be me playing something stupid off of like a speaker. But that's perfect for a segment because segments can have the dumbest thing ever.
Yes.
Anyway, I want to call this segment it's this week's Incognito podcast because if you are like me and don't want to be deluged with even more PragerU bullshit, then you probably don't want to just raw dog the internet when it comes to looking up the stuff I'm looking up. Or you're just going to be in fucking PragerU limbo for the next month. And this one is going to fall into the anti-vax limbo. So it's insert music here. It's this week's Incognito podcast. And this one is about I don't really want to say her name. Let's see.
Is it someone people can vote out?
No. This is a person who is actively not somebody you can vote out of anything. All right. Well, I'll just leave it at that. Her name is also a little bit strange to remember the. It's one of those like it's not British, but it's got a little bit of stank on it from somewhere, and I feel like I'm gonna be kicking myself if I just don't mention it at all. So, all right, come on. My phone is very slow lately, so it's
all those Domino's notifications.
Yeah.
Clogging up the system.
That's the downside. So after every podcast, it's my once a week food delivery. So I don't want to get used to it because that's not the way I want to live. But I do want to have like food that isn't just stuff that I've cooked, and usually stuff that I eat for like 5 to 10 days at a time.
Yeah.
So to mix it up, and also now that I work Sundays at a location, having something that's more like interesting and often drinking when we do the podcast makes it so I can sleep normal hours and like go to work like a normal human on Sunday. Anyway, so yeah, this lady is Judy Mikovits. She is a person who has a PhD in biology, which I just want to get that out of the way early on because I feel like people use PhDs as a way of saying like, well, this person is actually like, it's not even that they're comparing it to medical doctors exclusively, but usually I think people have a misunderstanding of PhD as being a hard focus on something as opposed to being like a genius. Yeah. You can get a PhD in something if you're passionate about it, much in the same way that a degree in college courses generally denotes passion and a willingness to focus on something as opposed to like brilliance. I even just saying that feels like it's being shitty to certain people, and I don't mean it that way, but I think it's important to remember that if somebody has an advanced degree, they are not better than you. Like, I have a degree and a lot of my friends don't. And I really hate when that is used as a like way of saying like, well, you have a degree, so like, of course this is like blank for you. Like, it's really not different. Having a degree is having a piece of paper that says you're passionate about something and that you
Yeah.
put the time in to like look into it a lot. Passion can be pointed in a lot of directions, and you shouldn't judge your worth based on that. And I would say, in a lot of cases, people who didn't get a degree in something made the right move in current economies.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
Point.
I definitely will have debt for the rest of my life on a very basic degree that has not advanced my life. And I've worked incredibly hard to try and push it forward, and it doesn't matter. So that's my weird beginning screed to this other screed, because I want to make sure people know I'm going to be talking some shit about people who do have degrees. And just remember, that doesn't mean you're like incredibly talented person at everything. That means you have focused on some things in your life and you care about them. So let's see where to start. So Mikovits did, her name has been coming up lately because she recently started pushing a filmed in portions documentary. That term is being used sort of shittily by me. It's a documentary that they are going to be adding DLC to as time goes on, because doing that will get them more attention and ultimately get them more money and donations and shit like that.
Yeah.
I'm not even really that upset at that structure. I think that's fine, but you see it a lot with media, and people are trying to point to them not releasing the whole thing at a time, and the fact that it's being scrubbed off of a lot of websites that have the ability to do that. People like to talk about free speech with like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of those kinds of like places where you can put things, but those are privately owned businesses, like or publicly traded businesses. It doesn't matter. Those businesses do not have to put your content on them, and it is not silencing your voice to take that content off of them.
Yeah.
I don't always agree with it. I think that internet video being like taken from the public is a problem, and I also think that social networks not having any regulations and also being taken from the public is a problem. And I would absolutely use that as my like holding up communist ideals kind of thing. Like, those should be in control of like the community. Those should not be one person making tons of money and having a lot of like impetus to maybe silence a few voices that disagree with them and stuff like that. But that being said, that swings both ways, and there is a lot of consequence to putting stuff that is blatantly false up and like supporting it, and it's less problem for some of these people and platforms if they just say we're not going to do that, because it does lose you a lot of faith if you put something up like this Plandemic movie that they're making. This documentary like series they're making, and it's about this lady Mikovits. So anyway, she has a PhD in biology. This is going to be a long thing, I fear, but I have a lot of opinions on this, and I would like to hear your, even if they're drunk, opinions on some of this too.
Okay.
Anyway, so this documentary is about Mikovits being, as she puts it, ousted from the scientific community, where they were making giant breakthroughs on how viruses were being transported into people via vaccines. That's sort of the general breakdown of this. So one of the places where she has come up is Alex Jones. And that's not the first place that I heard about this, which is weird for a lot of this conspiracy shit. Less weird for the anti-vax community because they are disturbingly prominent in certain parts of the internet that I unfortunately do go to, but kind of wish that I didn't have to see what kind of fucking things are being talked about on some of this. It does fall a little bit into what we were talking about before of like, maybe don't spread this stuff if it's not that common, but unfortunately this one is really getting out there, and that's why I want to talk about it. So this documentary series is being scrubbed off of a lot of places, YouTube, Facebook, stuff like that. I don't care about that part. I think that the fact that it is getting its name out there and people are defending it is basically just working as free advertising. And you can have somebody mentioning, this movie on a platform and being upset that it's not allowed. And I guarantee you that's going to get more people to watch it than just having the link up and them seeing what that link is for. They also used the style of link that you use for like a real movie, which I'm not going to say it because fuck off, but also like it kind of sucks. There is like a certain savviness that they have that is leading people to believe it is a more well-produced thing than it is, as opposed to like, from everything I've seen of this production group, basically one shitty guy who is also very into like the fake science world and the conspiracy world, and just wants to make a name for himself. You even really get that feeling. The one piece of this they've released so far is like 28 minutes, 26 minutes, something like that. And I did watch it. Don't watch it. Like, I'm going to talk about anything that's worth talking about in this, and it's stupid. And you're just going to have a lot of people. I mean, you can watch it if you want. I'll send you personally, Madison, a link if you want to see it.
Okay.
But the amount of time that the guy doing the interview spends on his own face is a real good indication of like the way that he's treating this. And anyway, so this I'm gonna call it I don't know. Shamdemic is a pretty dumb name, but I like it. It's about as creative as what they came up with. Anyway, so I'm going to dip into notes territory. So there will be... I'm not the best at reading off of notes, but I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to stick it to the side of my screen.
Okay.
Set up a little thing here so I can see it easily. I
had to plug in the computer.
I like your slow but visible intoxication. I
had like 4 licorice strings for lunch, so that's probably why.
Do you want to take a sandwich break? You're welcome to if you want to.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. I just wanted to offer it. And I'm going to work through this fairly quickly. It's just a lot of notes. It's not a lot of time, really. Anyway, so... this opens up with her talking about how she has been ousted from the scientific community, and specifically, I'm going off of her words for this beginning part. She says that she worked closely with Fauci. So this ties her, and I think why it's so popular so quickly is it ties in this anti-vax idea into a person who is slowly being turned into like leftist propaganda as like what people think of, even though there's nothing about Fauci that seems leftist to me. It is just a person who is not fucking like completely irresponsible like figurehead during this. It is a lot like tied into the whole like demonizing the CDC and the WHO. And I get it with the WHO. It is tied to Bill Gates, and I think we should be skeptical of what billionaires' plans are. However, it's doing a lot more than a lot of other people are, and until we get through this, I think it is important that we use the resources we actually have. Like, just because it is, like, if it was fucking Peter Thiel, who is a irredeemable shitbag, if he was funding something that was doing the same work as the WHO, I would say the same thing. We should not keep this as our only option, but we sure as fuck should listen to what these experts are saying, because they are presenting things that are important for people to hear. I don't know if they are working too close with China or whatever. Also, maybe be introspective on your own country when you talk about China, because we are huge assholes in this country. And trying to say that like a giant capitalist society that has authoritarian like overtones to everything is the problem with the world is maybe a little like calling the kettle black when it's our fucking United States like through line on this. Anyway, food for thought if you haven't thought about that, which you should have. Anyway, God, there's a lot of bullshit here. So what stuff of this can I cut out? Because I was very in the zone of internet research / everything else that happens. So Mikovits goes on to talk about how she was ousted because she found a link that put her, let's see, very specifically, because it actually plays into it, what she says got her fired. And that's where this whole thing starts. So let's see. Also, keep in mind, she got fired in 2009, I believe. It was either the end of 2008 or the start of 2009 from a research company that was, it's called like the Whitmore Company, I believe. So this research company had ties to some things, mostly having to do with like paying people money to like sort of like more popular people to look into things, or to like be not figureheads, but be like I guess proponents of some of the stuff they were putting forward, basically to get like sound bites from people and things like that. So like one of the people that they had, and this part of it isn't really that nefarious. It is kind of how a lot of companies that make products that are like drug-based work, and we should change it. But it's sort of par for the course. And this Whitmore company, and it'll come up here in a minute. They had I think it was a Nevada judge that was like an advocate for the stuff they were doing, and they had given them like contributions in exchange for that kind of stuff. The stuff that is like shouldn't be allowed, but it kind of just is. And this judge was, it ended up being somebody who was involved in the eventual hearing that happens with Mikovits over what she does after she gets fired from this company. And the judge removed himself from the proceedings voluntarily because they didn't want to cause a conflict of interest with the fact that they had a prior relationship with this company. So I'm going to get that out of the way first, because the Whitmore Company isn't that interesting. It's just sort of a in the family rich group of people who are trying to do scientific research, which is unfortunately a lot of the places that have the capital to do that kind of stuff are those kinds of places. My stepmother worked for a place that was not exactly like that, but was helped in their funding by like the Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a rich couple who just really cared about like furthering people's ability to fight cancer. So they started hiring a bunch of people who had good credentials, and my stepmother was one of those people early on. I think in like the first 10 people that worked there, and like they got bought out by Lilly, a company that is real shitty, and they basically dumped all of their very promising cancer research and took some of the blood regulation medications they were using and turned it into Cialis. So like, let's bring back some boner talk, but essentially that's what happens with a lot of these shitty drug companies is they will use their pre-existing capital to buy out stuff. And if you have a person who runs your company, which it was as soon as that company was taken away, it was turned over because they were too old at that point. They'd been doing it for like 15 years. They sold the company they gave the CEO position to a person who was promising, I guess, for some aspect of what they had done. And that person ended up saying, okay, well, I'm going to sell this and make all my money and not work anymore. Which is why capital is maybe not something that should be the basis of our entire society. And so that dumped a bunch of cancer research and turned into boner pills, which, yay. Anyway, so that thing that got her, she likes to make a big deal out of how she was put in jail, which is not being put in prison. She was not put into like big sentencing like procedures. She was put in jail because she got fired from the Whitmore company after, well, fired, or I guess she was fired. Yeah, not let go. That sometimes it really only makes a difference in my head when it comes to unemployment at this point. So whatever. She was fired from the Whitmore company for taking a bunch of data on like various like drives, and then also, yeah, your cat's still just sitting there.
Staring at the mirror, doing weird shit.
Oh yeah, your cat's haunted for sure. But so she when she got fired, she took a bunch of information from the company, and she also took a lot of like actual physical files apparently from the company that are the property of the company, and they asked for them back and weren't getting it. So essentially they put in like a complaint, like a legal complaint saying, we need this shit back, this is ours. That is the only point where Fauci as a figure actually comes into this story. She makes a lot of claims about how she knew him personally. When I actually looked into like the reporting on it and the story of how this happened, it's totally plausible that she worked in a team that worked with Fauci as like the head, because he was already in a fairly important position of like overseeing a lot of like advancement in like us trying to make vaccines for stuff. And for anti-vax communities, being involved in those kinds of places makes you a villain very quickly. So the issue that actually led her to this point, like her story from being a credible scientist to being somebody who was put in prison, or sorry, jailed briefly. I need to remember that as a difference. I found a lot of things that were talking about it, and it ended up being like she was arrested, essentially, is what that comes down to. She had to, from what I can tell, get bailed out of jail because she was running away with these documents. And the only time that I've ever seen somebody not have consequences from something like that, other than like, you know, you get fired from an office job and you steal a stapler or some shit. Fuck, I have a lamp that I love that is from a job I had, And I showed up, and they there's a story attached to this that fucking sucks too. Companies are terrible. I showed up and they took me to a room and said, "Here's a box to your stuff. Sorry, we can't keep you here." And in that box was 2 lamps, neither of which were mine, and a bunch of like stuff from the area where I sat that was like questionable. Like, it was basically just stuff that they didn't have on somebody else's desk next to it, and they were like, "This must be his." So I unintentionally ended up with like some stuff that was mine and a bunch of stuff that was office stuff that I just inherited, I guess. Anyway, that won't get you prosecuted, but taking stuff that is actual like data that is paid for by the company, much in the same way that if you say go to art school and produce art in that school for parts of that school, you can't then sell that. That is essentially like the thing I think people don't understand about intellectual property is if somebody is funding something you're doing, at the end of that process, that isn't yours. You can have that information. You can know those things and apply it to something later in a lot of cases, but that is sort of the other part of like capital being a little weird is in order to maintain things like intellectual property in general, you actually do lose a lot of your like rights of like things that you have done by submitting to that system.
Yeah.
But that's the only way you can get money and live. So like, hey, you know. Anyway, her story of how that happened is that she found evidence of something that was, let's see, I don't want to get this specific thing wrong. It is called XMRV. It stands for something real annoying to say. I think I have that available on here. Yeah, load how you want, I guess. So I want to tell you this name because it's fucking ridiculous. XMRV stands for Xenotropic Marine, MUR, not MAR. Xenotropic Marine Leukemia Virus-Related Virus. So what that breaks down to is, I don't know what marine stands for. I didn't feel like looking that up. There's a lot of scientific terms that are like, yes, that means something. No, I don't care right now. Xenotropic Marine Leukemia Virus-Related Virus essentially breaks down to a virus that they found traces of when they were looking at cultured mouse cells while they were testing for like the aspects of a virus. So in this case, they were looking at leukemia and they ended up with, as far as I know, that is what it seems to be. They were looking at like cancer-based stuff, like a lot of like research ends up being. They were looking at just, you know, ways that they could try and produce vaccines for things like that. And they found traces of a consistent strain of a virus that was present in everything that they were working with in regards to the specific thing. So her story based on this is that she discovered what she said was essentially like a virus that was being Trojan horsed into something. And this is going to work into COVID. So keep this part in mind. She was saying that there was a virus purposefully being placed. She came to purposefully later, but showing in all of the cases of something being injected into something else, which is the mice in this case, with the purpose of fixing this problem. So most likely version of this is they are putting something into mice to try and reduce or slow the growth of tumors to see how this affects leukemia whatever it is they're researching in mice at the time. And in doing so, in taking samples of these tumors and measurements and all that kind of stuff, I I helped with some of this stuff as a kid. It's real weird, uh, but it makes sense when you learn how it works. You use these immunodeficient mice as a blank slate to see what happens with this process. So say you want to inject something into a mouse and see if it is fixing a tumor in a space that is not being affected by an immune system of another animal or any animal, so that you can start human trials, which is the process of seeing how a human's body in return reacts to that, because now you're working with an ecosystem that you can turn into something productive. So this sans immune system space of using mice is important, even if it sucks. And I get why people are upset about using that. And if we can get something that's like lab based and it's going to have to be organic, but like not another creature, that would be great.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what she is saying in this situation is that because they are finding this virus and these are immunodeficient mice, the only answer is this is being injected into them because there is nothing else in these mice. So does that make sense as like a baseline of something?
Yeah.
And because of that, like believable scientific space, it makes total sense that you would end up with like a believable story now. Like if people are looking at something as like this virus is being injected into people, this is the smoking gun for a lot of people if they don't look into it any further. So this whole situation with the mice is like a breakthrough for her initially, and it's not necessarily a negative on science breakthrough, and that's part of why it becomes very spurious later. So she writes a paper up and presents this paper to a scientific magazine called Science. And this magazine's pretty like it's a big deal. Like it actually is like one of the magazines that at my family's my stepmother's workplace, they would have copies of Science. They would have copies of, I forget, there's a few other scientific like industry magazines have the worst fucking names, but Science magazine. Yeah, they printed an article talking about the test results of this, and she like I don't think she was giving talks at this point, but she had this article up, and it caused a lot of buzz because like this is a notable thing. Like, where is this weird virus coming from if it's not something that can be present in these mice before they inject them? So this becomes a big thing, and in the United States, they're doing testing and they see some traces of it, and they kind of jump to the conclusion that, oh, this is a thing. This is definitely like true to our research. So like, of course, like we need to figure out what this is. So it makes sense that it's a big deal. The side note to this is that they were doing this research in Europe and some other areas, and they weren't finding it. That's sort of like neglected in a lot of this information. Like the stuff she's putting forward doesn't really talk about how it's very like not happening other places, you know?
Yeah.
So using the same procedures to get to this testing state and then not finding the same thing in mice in other countries is weird. And it also is great for conspiracy because then you can start saying like, well, clearly it's the government or whatever.
Yeah.
And you add somebody in like Fauci who does work with the government, especially now, you can start tying that stuff together, but it ignores the fact that at that point, he's not the head of the CDC. He's a guy in charge of this kind of research, though. And she likes to focus on a lot of things like people being shitty about like saying who wrote what and like sort of taking other people's ideas and moving it up the chain to be like somebody who's in charge's idea and that kind of stuff. that's just shitty business. Like, it really doesn't matter to the story ultimately, because the only thing they could be stealing the ideas for is what end up being pretty bad ideas. The other thing is she says that it was covered up, but covered up in this case actually kind of means vetted, which is something you're supposed to do in science. And now I'll get to why this was vetted. So over the course of the last, or not the last, but over the course of 2009 to 2018, which is the time where she was kind of quieter, but like becoming more of a figure in the anti-vax society, she starts. Oh, hold on. Okay, the reason why she got arrested. I'll do that first. This is not something I'm practiced in doing, so give me a little bit of space on that. So she, let's see, do I have any pertinent information I'm leaving out? I don't think so. God, some of this stuff is fucking stupid. Anyway, a lot of this stuff has to do with watching Plandemic, and that's where it gets really fucking stupid. So, to finish her origin story, the magazine starts getting the test results. I like this because it gives me the active response that people listening to this might have.
It's not you, it's the beer.
It's okay. It's also too warm today. I'm also very tired. Here, let me catch up with you a little bit.
Okay. I promise I'm not bored. I'm just like, I have beer.
It's okay. I have taught people before as well, so like this just makes me remember doing art classes where it's like, no, if you bend the brushes that way, it's not going to get a good line, and people being like, oh, I gotta go to sleep. Anyway, you got to make sure that you pull the color into the other color. You don't want to just mix it up. So what ends up happening is the science magazine starts getting more and more testing results from other places. Because at the beginning, they're getting a piece that is basically meant to say, these are results I got. We've looked at it enough to like put it into this science journal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not meant to be final information. Like, if you've read any of those journals, they're actually pretty interesting. But we even actually printed something kind of like that for a conference, I think, while we both worked at the print shop. It was, oh, wait, no, you weren't there yet. Sorry. So it is basically a big collection, slightly smaller for magazines because they're monthly, but like typically it is a bunch of like 1 to 10 page descriptions of people's research. And it's meant to be like an informational sharing tool to like see what's new in your community, what kind of ideas are people having, and what kind of results are they getting. So like a science magazine is exactly what it sounds like. It is mostly boring, and it is mostly people talking about like, well, I saw something really interesting about the leaf color of this thing, and like talking about whatever it is that they're interested in. I will say, for the amount of biological sciences talk I got as a kid, it's all interesting if you're interested. And if you're not interested, there's about 10% that's like, oh, and then the other 90% is like, what? What's an allele again? Like, it's just not. I like it. Don't look into it unless you think you'll like it, because it can be incredibly boring. Anyway, so in a place where oftentimes people are starved for really interesting information, something that's a mystery like this got a lot of like publicity because it's super interesting. And what ended up happening is, in 2 phases, the magazine got a lot more like results as people were also looking into this for themselves. And I think it was like a month or 2 later, they put in a partial retraction that was like, okay, we're getting a lot of like information from other people testing this, and they're not getting those results. And we're looking into these results, and they're like kind of not the best. Like, they seem like they're kind of opinion based on some of this, and maybe leaving out some stuff that we need for like good results. So like just be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few months after that, I think it was a 6 months period in total from the original article, they fully retracted it and were like, we're getting results from this stuff and it is just bullshit. Like what we are seeing is essentially none of this stuff is coming out the way that it says in this article. We're sorry about that, but like the shit happens. And those totally come up in those magazines. Like you get people writing about the science they're doing. You also are going to get people testing that science and finding it inaccurate.
Right, that's how science works.
Exactly. And that is what vetting is, and that's why we have the science we have that can help people so much, is because you don't just go, oh, that just fixes it? Great, we'll use it. Like, the reason why we aren't going to have a vaccine for a while isn't because science is shitty. It's because we have to vet it, because you don't know. Like, with the hydrochloroquine shit, like, you start giving that to people, and then all the, like, the way that they found out about that was the way that they found out about the negative side effects of that more recently, at least, which people already were kind of suspecting, but before they did like the voluntary trials, which is, it sucks, but it's also like people with terminal cases. Did you hear about that? Like how they got the information on that? So a few hospitals with people who were in a position where it's like, this is not fixing it enough. We are afraid that you're probably like gonna die from this.
Yeah.
They essentially, or at least you're in a spot where it's critical. Do you want to add something to your routine that might help it? And that's how the hydrochloroquine stuff started into that range of like, we shouldn't be using this like 3 or 4 weeks ago, is because they had a few hospitals using it and they saw like I want to say it was like a 20 to 30% increase in the amount of people who died in the situation they were in when they started taking it.
Oh, wow.
And like they had already suspected it's maybe not the best for like people who are compromised to take due to like certain things. I don't know the specifics of it, but I know that there were concerns regarding like blood pressure and a few other things that are, you know, just things that you need to know if you're going to use something like that. And that's why they ended up with hydrochloroquine as like, do not use this, is because the results, like the non like fully vetted FDA style results, but still very indicative of what could be, where essentially it has no real benefit in most people who are in this like COVID like issue, but it does seem to have some negative benefits for enough people to where we should not use it. And I think that sucks that they had to find out by like asking people, are you willing to use this untested thing so we can see what it does? But at the same time, like, at least we have that information now. That is why vetting for something like a vaccine, and like all vaccines really, has to be done through channels like that, where it's like, we need to really be careful because this thing might seem fine. And it's part of my problem with the anti-vax community in general is, as much as they might say otherwise, they are discrediting real science to try and keep people safe in favor of something that absolutely might get people killed. And there's the whole like herd immunity issue, which again, I hate that they're using that terminology for like the COVID stuff, where it's like, we just get everybody sick, it'll be fine. Herd immunity is the type we want with vaccines, is designed to save the lives of the people who are immunodeficient and people who are older who just are that way naturally. It comes a lot into something I was going to talk about last week, which is the survival of the fittest argument, where a lot of people like to try and say the fittest of us are the people who aren't immunocompromised. So like, we're just doing nature's job. That might be in like nature, but we're we're kind of working outside of it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And survival of the fittest seems to be held up with this idea of a very pro-white nationalist like rant of, well, if I have a gun, I'm fitter than the people who don't. And if I have privilege of whiteness, I'm fitter than the people who don't. Yeah. And that is why the like intellectual dark web, I'm using quotations because they're fucking idiots, they have no leg to stand on that stuff. If you believe that somebody with a gun is more fit than you and that their words mean more, then I guess you're already too stupid to understand why that's a bad idea. Also, there's a reason why that goes hand in hand with authoritarianism. It is authoritarianism in the end. Like, you could say that our president is the fittest because he got where he is, but that doesn't mean anything. And they're using the exact same kind of logic when it comes to a lot of these kinds of arguments of like, if we're going to be paying attention to people, then it needs to be the people who are like able to survive, and that's not good. Like, we can't deny people vaccines because, well, it's only the weak people who will die. Anyway, we go into a whole indigo children thing, stuff like that. There's a lot of ways that people cope with autism being in their family, and it sucks. And there are outside things that I'm sure affect it. But there's also just, with a lot of science, there's a lot of things that we're better at reporting and identifying now that are the actual major reason why those numbers go up. And it's the same thing that people use with racism, where they say like, well, racism or just violence porn, stuff like that, where people like to talk about how the like knife violence in Europe went way up when they started not allowing people to have guns. And it didn't. It went up in certain ways slightly, but gun violence went way down, and the reporting of it got way better. It's the same reason why Florida is the asshole of the US. It's not because it actually is. It's because their reporting laws are sunshine laws. They let you report on everything. So when you can report on everything, oh, that's hell on earth. And like, yeah, it's a good actual example of the US. So welcome to Florida, everyone who lives here. Anyway, the point is,
I didn't actually know that about the reporting laws.
Yeah, it's shitty that people don't know more about that because it makes a lot more sense.
It's easier to just blame it on Florida being Florida.
They are still like a weird, like right-wing state with a few left-wing places and a real problem with immigration where they think immigrants are the devil and a huge elderly population. So it's the perfect mix of places for like hard racism and like people who are disadvantaged to get pushed into like violent situations, but not more than Georgia. You know, they're just reported on differently. And they're big. Florida's very large. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so sunshine laws aside, it would be bark. It would be nice if those kinds of laws actually existed for the science community, because this kind of shit happens when it doesn't. So when she got fired for people trying to repeat her research, at least this'll add some flavor. She got fired because she got discredited, essentially. Like, and I don't necessarily fully agree with some of that stuff, but it wasn't the only reason she got fired. She actually also had, let's see, what's the wording that got used for this? Claims. She had it was, the information on this was not reported well enough for me to know, but either way, it's not good. She got fired partially because this stuff went down and she tried to defend it as opposed to like do the honorable thing and say, oh yeah, that must have been a mistake. Mm-hmm. And to be clear, I will mention it afterwards. There is a very obvious reason later why this mistake was made, and it makes total sense. So she kept trying to prove that this stuff was, in fact, being injected into mice and being discovered by her. And she took a report that was holding up some of that stuff and reused it, like reused the same information, but put different results on it and labeled it differently to uphold her own view of it. So the reason why she ultimately got fired wasn't because she was like standing by her research. It's because she straight up lied to the scientific community to try and reprove her research after the fact. And she got really pissed off when she got fired, but it's also like, you know what you're doing at that point. Like, you can believe it wholeheartedly. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of anti-vaxxer people do believe what they're saying, or they wouldn't be so passionate. They're not gaining from it. Like, they're I mean, potentially saving some money from like not getting vaccines, but like that's not near worth your children if that's actually
there's no real benefit
right
to that.
And this will tie into some things that actually fit that state of mind perfectly. So anyway, the reason why people were disproving what was happening, and the reason why, as best as the now like 12 years of research have shown, the reason why that stuff was happening. So Europe wasn't getting XMRV at all. They were doing the same things, and they were getting, you know, whatever results they were getting from the actual injections, but they weren't getting any XMRV. I'm not going to repeat what that is because it's impossible for me to stick it in my brain. All I remember is virus-related virus is incredibly stupid to say. So Europe and I think parts of Asia were not getting those at all. And the reasoning they found out was that there was actually a virus that was being transmitted between the breedings of the mice for science in the United States. So the thing that seems to actually be happening, and the reason why it's centered around, like, I think it was the Southwest, and it got less probable the further away you got, was because it was literally the breeding of these mice. So they were getting an inborn, just sort of like seemingly non-abrasive virus that was slowly making its way into the mice population. And they discovered it. So it is a discovery of sorts, but it actually had nothing to do with the injections. It had to do with how the mice came to the laboratory in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's part of why they were able to find out what it was at all, is because you can test that before you ever test anything on the mice if you suspect maybe that's the case. And for the most part, people don't suspect that's the case because that's like getting a clean tool and trying to think like, oh, this already has something on it. Like, once it's run through an autoclave, it's sterile, supposedly. So like that's oftentimes like either the very first or the very last thing you check. It seems like it was the very last thing they checked in this case. Anyway, so her research was interesting and was not nefarious, but in her trying to defend it, even when the results proved it wrong, it became sort of nefarious.
Well, yeah, because she just completely falsified more test results to confirm what she was trying to prove.
So that is sort of the origin story of this whole thing. That's where her science career sort of went. And she has issues with certain scientists. All this stuff is like in there, but like that's a job. Like, people are shitheads. Honestly, I couldn't care. There is some evidence that Fauci even might have been like kind of an asshole in his executive position doing whatever. I don't care. Most people are dicks. That's what happens. Anyway. I forget that talking about this stuff makes my throat real parched. I need a wetter throat when I'm out of orange juice. So, jump ahead, literally fucking 9 years to when she resurfaces to the, like, conspiracy, like community in a larger way in 2018. So in 2018, and this is a smaller part of this whole thing, but it's important information if you want like what she's like sort of leading up to, and not that she just appeared again recently because she was being held back by the man. And now that coronavirus is here, she's here to tell us what it's really about. So in 2018, I believe that's when she released her first book, or her second. She writes books basically about how the science community doesn't want to admit that vaccines are evil, even though fuck her. That's like the worst message to give, especially if you got a PhD in biology. Like,
yeah, that's pretty...
be responsible. Anyway, so at this point, she starts getting into something called Seramin. I don't know what Seramin is. It wasn't serum. I thought that's what she was saying to start with. It's some compound, and I didn't look into this specific thing because, as far as I can tell, nobody has talked about it in any way except that, what is this exactly? So let's just replace Seramin with snake oil, because at this point there is no real scientific reference that I have for it. Is this what it sounds like when your brother takes care of dogs?
Yeah, could you handle that? I'm gonna close my door.
Okay. This is taking a long time to get through, but I assure you, there is a point. I really don't like when people start spreading an idea that the thing that will save people's lives is the exact thing they should avoid. And I totally understand if people want to stop listening. I'm over halfway through this probably. Like, it is sort of a long-ish story, especially when it's interjected with opinions. But I think it's important to discuss this. How's your dog situation?
It's great.
Oh, good. All right. So in 2018,